call to order this meeting of this joint conceptual workshop for the Franklin Municipal Planning Commission and the Board of Aldermen for July the 24th, 2025. We'll just start by running down the agenda, the call to order here. Commissioner Harrison.
Present.
Commissioner Allen.
Present.
Commissioner Franks.
Present.
Commissioner Lindsay is here. Commissioner Orr.
Present.
Commissioner McLemore.
Present.
Commissioner Williamson.
Present.
And Alderman Peterson.
Here.
We are all, no, we're not. Commissioner Mann is not here, but everybody else is. Okay. And that's it, right? No mayor and no alderman. Except for you. So we have one item on our agenda for tonight. And item number one is the discussion of a potential Envision Franklin plan amendment to reduce the conservation design concept for the property located at 354 Franklin Road, that being the Roper's Knob property. We'll start off with a staff presentation.
That'll be me this evening. I just have a few brief comments. So due to the prominence of this hillside and hilltop, the views from major thoroughfares, and the extent of the request to amend the line for the hillside hilltop overlay, an Envision Franklin amendment is first needed to amend the conservation design concept line prior to any request to rezone the HHO boundary. So this is actually an Envision Franklin amendment request that you're going to be hearing about. The proposal is a significant deviation from the conservation line in Envision Franklin. And so we just want to make sure that we're following Envision Franklin, setting that rule and policy first, and then staff is able to make appropriate recommendations for any future HHO line request. Generally, staff looks to existing slopes, tree canopy, and view shed of the hill and hilltops when considering changes to the conservation areas within the hillside hillcrest overlay. While many of the areas proposed for change are consistent with areas of little slope or little tree canopy, staff is still somewhat concerned about the impacted view shed from the primary gateways into the city, being Franklin Road, Mac Hatcher Parkway, and Cool Springs Boulevard. Without an accompanying plan that shows the siting of buildings, as well as the proposed height, scale, and massing of buildings, staff really can't comment on whether the change to the conservation area substantially impacts the view shed of the hill. So we don't really have any firm comments at this point without seeing more information. So I'll turn it over back to you, Mr. Chair, for the applicant's presentation.
Okay. Is there someone here representing the applicant?
Hello, my name is Greg Gamble, and I'm representing the applicant Cumberland and Western, and Evans Wellburn is with that group, and he's with us tonight as well if you have any questions for him. Do I just click on this? All right. So tonight is a little bit unusual. Usually, you have joint conceptual workshop after an applicant has made a submittal. We've not made a submittal. We're here in front of you tonight because we are seeking your input and some feedback from you. We would like to move forward with an Envision Franklin plan request. We have submitted concepts on this in the past, probably over the past 2 years. We've had several neighborhood meetings about this, and it's difficult to invest in a full master plan not knowing whether there might be some flexibility in this particular issue on this property regarding the hilltop hillside overlay. So the city of Franklin established parameters by which the hilltop hillside overlay criteria is determined. In the city of Brentwood, they have an elevation. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but somewhere around 780 feet. Anything above that is protected. So To give you some sense of kind of what some municipalities do. In Franklin, though, we said every hill's different. Every view shed's different. And some areas may be steeper than others and may require more protection. And so the HHO was applied using multiple factors. Tree lines, for instance, was a factor in establishing the protection area of the HHO. So on this property, which is in between the CSX Railroad and MacHatcher Parkway, there are two areas in Envision Franklin that are identified as conservation. That's the dark green that you're seeing there. The dark green here along the top, that's the 100-year floodplain. That's Spencer Creek, and so it has a 100-year floodplain, and that's part of the conservation zone. The other area of conservation is the HHO area. Roper's Knob is over here. This property is owned by the state of Tennessee, here. This property is owned by the city of Franklin. And then this property here is owned by Cumberland and Western. We would like to bring forward an Envision Franklin plan request, not to change the underlying rural reserve policy at this time, just for your consideration on this conservation area. So we want to talk through that tonight. Looking at the aerial photograph and the existing topo that's on the property, if you're over here, if you can see my cursor, if you're right over here on the Franklin Road side, that's at an elevation of 680 feet. If you're back over here on the property that the city of Franklin owns, that's an elevation of 740 feet. So you can see that the HHO line's not necessarily following contour lines. It's not set by a contour line. It follows the view sheds around the property. Over on this side, at Cool Springs Boulevard, the HHO line is this orange line, and it's at an elevation of 770. And then it drops down in elevation to this point, which is at 700. So you've got a 70-foot of grade change along MacHatcher Parkway, going from the high point here at Cool Springs Boulevard all the way down to this jog at this point, at which here it drops down another 25 feet back to that 680 contour line, where it continues kind of following around. It does drop in elevation here about 20 feet, 15 feet out into the open field. We have met with planning staff multiple times. We've been on buggies, we've been driving around the property, and one characteristic of this land is that there's an existing tree line that kind of runs in a straight line along this contour. And so we wanted to start the conversation in this open field about establishing the HHO line at a natural point in the break of the hill. Beyond this, to the west of that line, that's where a football field was previously constructed by a previous owner. You can see a barn, an old barn, where the HHO line goes through the barn. The current HHO line goes through that structure. And then over on the right side here, we want to talk about the steepness of that area and the slopes. So another factor that was used to determine the HHO line is steep slopes. The light purple that you're seeing here, those are slopes that are between 14 and 20%. The dark color that you're seeing in here, those are slopes that are 25% and greater. So over here along MacHatcher Parkway, we have two areas where the slopes are less than 9%. They're manageable for something. I don't know that we're necessarily proposing a use, but right now it's rural reserve and half-acre lots are supported, and it could be a single-family house, for instance. In this area that we've identified along the tree line, to the west of the tree line, there are some steep slopes in here, but those are man-made slopes. When the football field was created, the owner at the time built up a berm so that people would have a place that they could watch the games. And so it's just a viewing berm for the football practice. So we talked about the slopes. So here we've looked at some view angles and kind of some bird's eye views to give you a sense of how this change would kind of sit on the land. So on the right side here, we have the existing HHO. This is the old football field. You can see the barn here. And you then see the proposed HHO, which follows along the base of the tree line at the bottom of the hill before it flattens out. The first section that you're seeing through here on the top, that is Franklin Road on the left side. Then you have, if you can look on the screen here, you have this little red roof structure. That's that first rectangle. And then beyond that, you have the barn. And what we're showing here in the next line down is the line of sight. Well, that popped up. I don't know how I did that. That's the line of sight and would show you what a 50-foot tall structure would look like, and it would not be visible from Franklin Road. How do I get back? Drake, what do I do? Here?
Yeah.
Aha.
Presentation.
Aha. Thank you. But it's not going down, Andrew. Okay. So we did a video, flyby video. Is that going to work?
I'd have to exit out and then click on the video.
Uh-huh.
There you go.
Okay, so this will show you we're on MacHatcher Parkway here. This is the signalized intersection at MacHatcher and Cool Springs Boulevard. We've ghosted in the HHO line, so as you're watching the video, there'll be places where you might capture a glimpse of it. But really what we're talking about is really screened from view, even moving that area back just because of where they sit lower in elevation and those low slopes. And then here from this side, you can't see the HHO at all. Here now we're on Franklin Road passing by, and we want to kind of go up to an aerial view, show you the 50-foot tall building and the existing 32-foot barn. And we've added those in, ghosted those in, so you can kind of see where those are tucked in behind the berm and the railroad track there on Franklin Road. Is that helpful? All right, no, I messed up. I want to go back to that second to last slide there that has the bird's eye view. I'll get to it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I think this probably is one of the best images that kind of shows or articulates exactly where this line falls in the open field and then again along MacHatcher Parkway in Cool Springs. Thoughts?
Okay, so I have a question.
Sure.
So my question.
Can you-
to-
yeah.
Sorry, so I have
Speak,
to-
no, just speak into your
Chairman.
microphone.
There you go, you're lit.
Okay, so we mentioned every side of this equation except for the Hill Estate side. So for those residents who live on Ash Drive, and that's where I'm really concerned, I'll come back to the other. But for those residents who live on Ash Drive, part of this, well, see, the purple is what you're proposing now. And it's kind of hard, you know, like we said, like staff has said, it's kind of hard because what we're doing now is conceptual.
It is.
We're considering a change to Envision Franklin without a plan in front of us, right? And so I always get a little the willies with this because I always go back when we were on the board of mayor and alderman, and you know, it was always jammed down our throat. Royal Oaks Apartments, okay? So that just always gets back to me. But anyway, my concern is coming back to those residents at Ash Drive, okay? So
you can see right here, this orange line, that's the existing HHO. And you see the tree line that's underneath here. The tree line is about 25 feet, I think, in width. And what we're proposing for that area is leaving 150 feet width alongside there as a part of the HHO protection area. So right now there's really no buffer between residential and residential. We want to acknowledge that they've had this buffer behind them, and so we're leaving 150 feet. And we want your input on that too. Is that enough?
I guess if I'm driving up Sycamore, as I'm driving up Chestnut, what will I see? Because, you know, we're talking about the gateways into Franklin, but also these people have been living there, and as they live, what are they going to see as they drive up to their homes too, right? So
right.
I think that's something for us to be, that's something I'm concerned about.
Okay.
As well as the gateways into Franklin. As I'm driving down Cool Springs, what do I see as I look up? So it's just kind of,
What do you think about 150 foot of tree preservation through there? Is that?
well, no, I mean, I'm good with that too, but we get that if we did make the change, right? So I'm just, keeping conservation without making this change. So I just say
I see what
it's
you're saying.
kind of difficult. You see what I'm saying? So I just think we also need to be cognizant of the fact that, yes, we have the gateways, but we also have this gateway to people's homes too. So anyway, that's just a concern also. It's just kind of, what do we get? Once we make this change, what do we get then? Because you build in, what do you get?
If we move forward with this as an Envision Franklin plan submittal, we're required to have a neighborhood meeting, and we'll certainly invite those neighbors, and hopefully we can talk through that.
Right. I just want to make sure we're aware that that's also a concern.
Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, a couple comments on this. I think, especially when we're talking about giving up some of the hillside overlay, that's a concern to me, because I know once you give it up, you never get it back. Who knows what's going on there? And there's kind of a danger in setting a precedent for that. But with that said, if there is very good site reasons that there's a reason that we're, going to give up some of it, from my personal opinion, I could see the intersection of Cool Springs, that being validated. The intersection was put there, whether right or wrong, it's there, and we got to work around it. So I can see validation in that. Then when we're looking on the other, that kind of goes in this little bit of a gray area. That,
You're talking about here?
When we're looking over kind of on the Franklin Road side.
This area?
Yeah, that it's like, well, that's a big chunk, but when we look at kind of what's there, a lot of it's mowed. I think for the area, and I'll get to Ash Drive in a second too, I think for that area, I'm kind of on a fence. On one hand, it's like, well, it's existing HHO, you could always put new trees in there, whatever, we shouldn't give it up. But on the other hand, it's just, it has been mowed for ages, and it is what it is. And if the intent of the hillside overlay is, visual and all that, I could probably give a little bit more of that. One, maybe kind of trade I could see, because again, we're talking about precedence. So, what is the community going to gain? And it's like, well, Franklin's a tree city. What if there is a effort for reforestation of the proposed HOA that was cleared by the property owner? That's something that I think, that, okay, we're actually gaining, so many trees, we're kind of getting it back to the intent of HOA, but then, whatever development goes in here is getting kind of the usable property that resident had and mowed and graded and all. So that would be something I could see. Now, when we get to the Hill Estates area there, I think, especially when we're talking about giving away hillside overlay, giving it away as getting close to the back of the property, and I know 150 feet, if it's forested, but still, it's by the premise of it. And that's, when we talk about precedence, that's something I never want to see happen on any community, where it's like, oh, well, we just, reallocated this, and now they can build closer. And so with that, looking at the existing tree line, I could see
again, when we look at what the owner had done with the property, maybe that little straight line moves over to the existing tree line. That I could see is
You're talking about
being-
pulling the green line back to
Yeah,
here.
exactly, right there. And I could see that being something that, for the Hill Estates people, it's not affecting kind of their views. And I know it's quite steep graded and, you're in there and the trees are pretty tall. But I think as a purpose of precedent, I think we have to follow that tree line, especially if we're talking about giving over hillside overlay. Because I see that as a pretty big deal for the city of Franklin to do,
Okay.
so.
I most definitely agree. Thank you for clarifying what I was trying to get over, but wasn't really doing it all that well. I appreciate it.
I was
So,
just going to say, I concur with, they've explained it very well. And the S Drive situation, I totally agree with them on
Okay.
that. And it's no sense to me repeating something the others have already stated. We need to be very careful there. But I will say that you did your homework in showing us the line of sights and how it's going to look and how it can look if we do make some changes. But we still need to be conscious of certain locations, for example, the residents of S Drive. And I can see making a variance at some point.
Greg, there's a natural demarcation from east to west across there. They're close, looking back on the south side. What is that demarcation? How does that play into the overall lay of that land
Are you talking about over on the right side of the plan?
over on the
On the left side of the plan?
on the south side of the plan? Above those lots, there's a you can see it from the map just before it.
I think he's talking about the tree line,
Yes.
if you want to point to that and see if that's.
What I'm
This
talking
tree
about
line
is
right
that-
here.
is that's, nope, right there, straight up and down. Nope, come to the right, right there, straight up and down.
Yes, that's
That extends all the way up on the top of the knob and it extends down past the railroad track. What is that? What is that line?
there's
What
a
is it?
road that you can drive to get up into the top of the hill. To the water tower.
Okay,
There's a little drive connection here to a gate that's at Ash Drive. But
yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
that's the city's water tower up there.
And so when I look at that, and we talk about the amount of buffer you want to leave between there and Ash Drive, it just seems like it's kind of counterproductive
Okay.
to just let's go in and cut down half of the trees in here. Instead of 300 feet of buffer, now we're talking about 150 feet of buffer. Because when you start talking about clearing mass parts of this site, the whole concept of asking for more space to build and can we move the HHO line and things like that, I'm like, why did we eliminate that 300-foot wide buffer to start with? And I know a lot of it's about how much land you got to work with, but we also don't have the benefit of knowing what it is that ultimately you want to put in there.
Sure.
But-
we
'cause
weren't
that-
trying to be
that could have
arbitrary.
all the-
Right here, you see the start of the 14% slopes. And that's really why we drew the line where we did, because that's the start of the hill, right? That's the start of the slopes going up. So we weren't really trying to be arbitrary about where we drew that. And we knew that we wanted to leave a tree buffer alongside our neighbors. So we did pick a number of 150 feet. And but I'm hearing what you're saying.
Can you not 90 degree that to the west?
You can. That's pretty much what we've
And
done.
then once you get to the current hillside, that orange line there, that opens you back up.
That's right.
I mean, I don't see you gaining a lot more.
I think that's a detail we can bring back in a different way when we come with the Envision Franklin proposal. I think what we really are most interested in is knowing if you agree with the tree line here as being the base or the start of the hill, given what has happened out in the open field and the grading and everything that's taken place, and the fact that there aren't steep slopes kind of out in this open field, and the fact that The HHO goes across the middle of the barn. I know that not every HHO line in Franklin gets this much scrutiny, and I hope that this is a unicorn, but this is a little bit unusual.
Other than that one area of backing up to Ash that you're kind of encroaching, I'd leave that fully grown out
Okay?
and move the line there, but the rest of that seems pretty reasonable.
Okay.
I'd agree with that.
Okay.
And the property line follows the inside of the railroad track. It's not.
It does, yes. It's the inside of the
doesn't
railroad.
extend to Franklin Road except the.
And I believe that there's
initial
also a charter right-of-way easement over the property
Yeah.
as well for some distance.
part. So it seems like a big chunk of this whole concept would be how much natural vegetation can you leave along the inside of the railroad track to further block the view of this? Because we talked about Royal Oaks apartment complex, and if I get on a tall enough ladder at my house, I can just about see it, because I think you can see it from anywhere in Williamson County. But so from somewhere you can see, if you get to a place with high enough elevation, so.
Sure, there's a little spot right here that's flat, and you can drive a truck up there, and you can see West Haven under construction from that point. It's kind of neat seeing the factory water tower kind of coming up through the middle of the trees. So I can't even imagine being up all the way at the top.
That means there'll be a hiking trail with the observation post?
It'd be great, wouldn't it? That'd be great.
Other comments, questions?
What do you feel about reviewing this as a Envision Franklin Plan amendment without a layout, without a master plan? Because if we had the HHO amended to the way that you would prefer to see it, then we would be able to invest the time, money, and effort to create a master plan.
Well, what zoning would you be seeking and what?
So it'd be two zoning efforts. One zone would change the HHO line. Another rezoning, I just don't know yet. There's a lot to consider.
Civic or commercial or
I,
residential or what?
exactly. I don't know that I know that.
Oh,
The land use policy right now is rural reserve, which is a half-acre lot development policy. We would need to get another Envision Franklin Plan amendment if we want to do something more aggressive than that. But we want to kind of address this a little at a time.
I get the feeling we all like to see this stay residential.
you need some density there, that's for sure, whether it's stacked flats or 3 stories or something, but the fact that it's below grade of Franklin Road and you can't even see the barns or the football field now,
No, you can't.
I mean, you got a lot of opportunity to bring something to us.
That would be an Envision Franklin Plan amendment, for sure, but I think we would have probably some workshops and kind of talk through the design process.
Yes. Yes.
Because you want our honest opinion. So my honest opinion to you would be to meet with the neighborhoods, because you want to, you want to conserve your time and money.
That's right.
And as Scott, residential for sure. My opinion, if you want my support, I would just tell you now, in just giving you my opinion now, residential,
Okay.
and meet with the neighborhoods for sure.
And maybe part of that is the type of access that it would take to do something more than residential.
Yeah.
We don't want big roads, big intersections leading onto this parcel. We want it to remain as close to, we've spent, a good number of us have spent the last 18 years, we participated in the small area plan that covered all 4 corners. We've always thought of this as a residential property at best, and so other questions, comments?
Well, thank you all
Okay.
so much. Really appreciate the input
Okay,
tonight.
thank you. All right, is there any other business? Anything, Emily? Any announcements? Nope. Okay, I don't have a gavel. We are adjourned.